Hi, how are you doing this evening? My name is Brandt Morris. I'm a realtor with Bosley Real Estate here in Toronto, and I service the Greater Toronto area. I'm so excited to be presenting to you a workshop today on how to get into home ownership. So today we're going to start with a few things. First of all, I'd like to tell you a bit about myself before we get into the agenda. Next slide, please. I started off in banking. I worked in the banking field for over 10 to 12 years. I started off in investments and then moved over to the mortgage side of things. There I would build, produce, and market a lot of the mortgage products you see today, and also do a lot of the pricing for them. So I have a pretty good understanding of mortgage rates, etc. And I think that adds to my overall uniqueness in terms of helping my clients achieve their overall needs. I practice what I preach. So I will say this, I'm a real estate investor. I own real estate properties throughout Toronto. And also I'm a landlord. So I have a pretty strong understanding of tenants' rights, rents, etc. Also, like many of you here, I was once a first-time home buyer. So I know 100% that feeling you may or may not have, or the nervousness that may occur when trying to get into your first home overall. More importantly, I'm a father to 3 fantastic boys. They drive me crazy at times, but what I do is for them, and they are my world. In terms of hobbies, I would say before I had a list of things that I would do. Now I would say just life in general, especially with COVID. I think it's made a lot of us reflect on what is important, and I would say life is important. Just going out there and giving the best you can, giving 100%, and enjoying every day. So let's take a look at the agenda and get into it. Next slide. Thank you very much. So first of all, we're going to take a look at your team, the team that's going to help you become a potential homeowner. Then we're going to speak about getting started, establishing your lifestyle goals. When you find your dream property, what is going to happen? And last but not least, once your offer has been accepted, what are the next steps? So first of all, your team. Next slide. So your team, it's going to consist of mainly 3 people. And yes, there are other players out there, but these are the 3 main people on your team. A realtor like myself, and hopefully it will be me, a lawyer, and a lender. And I'm going to touch briefly on the roles more of the lawyer and lender. But first of all, I'm going to touch on the lender. So next slide. So getting started. What is the most important thing to do when trying to get into home ownership? The first step is getting pre-approved. It's the #1 thing you need to do when looking to purchase a home. A pre-approval will determine almost everything for you in terms of location, type of property that you may be looking for. If you're not pre-approved, you will have no idea in terms of where you can afford to live, what type of property you can buy, and more importantly, what your overall buying power is. Next slide, please. So the second thing I would say when looking for a property is establish your lifestyle goals. So maybe a specific community, a specific location, type of property, distance to and from work, schools for your kids, or maybe special family needs. Are you part of a particular group, or do you participate in certain activities? How close do you want to be to them at the end of the day? Next slide, please. So what happens when you find your dream property? Well, the first thing you need to determine is, what are you willing to pay for it? In today's market, it is extremely competitive. And I'm sure we've all heard of multiple offers happening out there in the market, which goes back to what I originally said about being pre-approved. If you're pre-approved, this will definitely help you figure out how much you can afford to spend on a particular property. The other thing is determine what the sellers are looking for. Sometimes money isn't everything. I know we're in a very tight market as we speak, and a lot of people would tell you, well, the property went to the highest bidder at the end. Not always. There are certain scenarios where, for example, a closing date may be preferable for a certain seller. If you're able to close quickly versus someone else. So for example, if a seller is looking to close within 30 days, but your competitor, someone else bidding on the property, can only close in 90 days, the seller may be willing to forego a few $1,000s in the offer price to facilitate a faster transaction. The other thing, once you found your property, is your deposit. How much you need to put down with that offer. With all offers, you are required to have a deposit, typically of around 5%. Keep in mind that deposit goes against your overall down payment. So for example, if you purchase a property for, let's say, $1 million, and you're planning to put down 10% as your overall down payment, which will then therefore be $100,000, a $50,000 deposit will suffice, which is 5%. Okay. The other thing I would say is consider your possession date. When would you like to close? This ties back into what the seller is looking for. It's a great way to be able to work with the seller to ensure that you're successful in obtaining the property. So determine how quickly you can close. A big part of this will, of course, be, does your lender or your mortgage broker or your mortgage specialist, whichever route you choose to go, do they have all the documents necessary from you? Do they have all your income, your job letters taken care of already? Do they have all these things? Proof of down payment. Do they have these things on file already? If they have these things on file and you're 100% prepared, you should be able to determine a closing date that will definitely suit your needs, maybe sooner or later in the process. Next slide, please. So once your offer has been accepted, what are the next steps? Well, first of all, as I mentioned originally, as part of your team, you will need a lawyer. A lawyer will help process your purchase. Typical lawyer fees will range anywhere on a purchase, anywhere from $1,200 to about $1,500–1,600 on the transaction. You'll need a mortgage once your offer has been accepted. Yes, I did mention pre-approval, but a pre-approval is based on you as the individual, not on the property. So the mortgage, which goes onto the property, is now taken care of at this stage, right? So I would say if you choose to go with it, as I said before, with a bank such as RBC, and you choose to use one of their mortgage specialists or use a mortgage broker who happens to be independent, that's all up to you. But I would recommend using someone that you are able to work with, you are confident in working with, and you can establish a great relationship with, because it's not a one-time transaction. It's especially beneficial if you can work with this person for maybe multiple properties throughout your lifetime. The other thing you're going to need is insurance. So contact an insurance company and find out about home ownership. Depending on the type of property, some insurance companies will not insure certain homes. So, for example, if a home has outdated electrical, i.e., such as, I should say, knob and tube, or if the home runs on well water or septic water for those properties out in the further regions of the 905, some insurance companies will not deal with those types of homes. So do your homework, do some shopping. Utilities, you need to get your utilities all set up at least 30 days prior to your closing date. So contact the gas company, let them know you're moving in, and a new person will be taking over. The other thing is movers. Contact moving companies. If you have friends, let them know that, hey, I'm going to be moving. Can you come out and give me a hand with this? And last but not least, change of address. I know usually in the midst of moving, we all forget to do a lot of things. And one of the things we tend to forget to do is change our address. So update your credit card companies for your motor vehicles. Let the licensing office know that you've moved. Update your driver's license information, etc. It'll just make the overall process and the move much easier. One thing I like to add also is overall cost. Typically on a purchase transaction, I would tell clients to put aside about 2.5 to 3.5% of the overall closing of the purchase price in terms of closing costs. And these closing costs are what it will take for you to close on the property above and beyond your down payment. So all these fees, all these steps we're looking at, as in the lawyer, movers, etc., there is going to be a cost to that. But there are also other costs when purchasing a property, such as land transfer tax. Here in the province of Ontario, you pay a provincial land transfer tax. However, if you're a first-time home buyer, you will receive a rebate. If you happen to buy in the city of Toronto, you pay a provincial land transfer tax in addition to a city land transfer tax. So it's a bit more expensive to close on a property in the city of Toronto versus the 905 region. However, I will say this, property taxes on the other end tend to be a bit cheaper in the city of Toronto than they are in the 905. Next, we're going to take a look at investing in real estate. It's a pretty hot topic out there, and I'm more than happy to go through the process with you and give you a better understanding of what it takes to invest in real estate itself. Next slide. So once again, over 20 years in the real estate industry, 10 plus years as a real estate sales representative. And yes, I am an active real estate investor. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I am currently a landlord, and I've invested in real estate in terms of doing renovations to turn around to sell, or as some people call flips, in the real estate market. Also have been a guest contributor for CTV Meet the Agents, a segment on real estate issues and news that would come on Sunday evenings. And I'm also host of my own show on YouTube called The Morris Code. So if you ever have a chance, please check it out. Next slide. So investing in real estate. So our overview and what we're going to take a look at is, first of all, why invest in real estate? The two main categories for residential real estate investments, 3 things to consider when looking for an investment property, and the elephant in the room, where I'm going to take a quick look at real estate investing in 2022 and beyond to give you a better understanding of what the future may look like. Next slide, please. So why invest in real estate? First of all, it's a great way to diversify your overall portfolio. And when I say overall portfolio is when building wealth, most people will have more than one investment type. So of course, we know that there are stocks, bonds, GICs, etc. But real estate is also an investment vehicle or tool. So it allows you to diversify away from stocks, bonds, etc., or as they call, say, equities, into another category. Also, real estate tends to be pretty low when it comes to volatility. So we don't typically have the spikes that you will happen to see in the investment realm. So for example, right now, if you're following the stock market, you'll know that the markets are down quite substantially from last year. Or if you've been dabbling in, let's say, Bitcoin or any of these other investment vehicles, most people right now are down quite a bit in these. Real estate does not have that type of volatility. It has what I would say a proven track record. Real estate has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the historical average return on real estate has typically been about 5 to 6%. However, I will say over the past few years, we've seen double-digit returns in the high teens, 19 to 20%, which I would say is which has been unheard of in the past. It's also a forced savings vehicle. It makes you think twice before cashing out. And when I say this, unlike stocks or bonds or Bitcoin or any other type of investment, you can always sell a portion of it. With real estate, it's a zero-sum game. Therefore, it's all or nothing. So it's either you sell the whole thing or you keep it yourself. So it almost forces you to save the equity that you have in the property. However, on the other end, it gives you the ability to leverage to your advantage. So a lot of real estate investors will use their current equity in one property to purchase another property. And that's pretty common when it comes to the world of real estate investing. So to give you a quick example, you purchased a property for $200,000 in 2010. It's now 2022, and that same property is now worth $500,000. So you've gained $300,000 in value. A lot of real estate investors would typically tap into that equity by not selling the property, but by doing a secured line of credit, or maybe doing what we say a refinance, and using that equity to now turn around and purchase another property. So therefore, they have used one property to invest into another property and now start to build a real estate portfolio overall. The next thing about real estate investing is it makes a great additional income stream. And when I say income stream, especially if you are in the real estate rental business. So if you happen to have tenants, it's a great way to earn extra income. So let's say your mortgage and interest and property taxes come to $1,000 a month, and you're able to charge $1,600, $1,700 a month in terms of rent. You have $700 extra per month coming into your household, which can be used for whatever you may choose to do. So it's a great way to have additional income out there. Next slide, please. So I'm going to stick with residential investing. There are other types of investing out there, such as commercial, industrial, etc. But residential investing is the most basic and where most people get their feet wet. So I'm going to stick with this. The first type of property is a condo. I started off investing in condos many years ago, and I still have condos that are investment properties, i.e. rentals. Why I like them? It's the cheapest way to get into. You can get into a condo today for a one-bedroom or even a bachelor unit for under $550,000. In some areas, even under $500,000. There's not much maintenance to it at all, because you're going to be paying some maintenance fees on the condo itself. You don't have to worry about repairs to the roof, foundation repairs, landscape, and anything like that. That's all taken care of in your maintenance fees. And it's a great option to get your feet wet. So it's a great way to get into the market. There's a high demand for condo rentals throughout the city. Yes, after when COVID happened, we saw a great decrease in overall demand. But over the past 4 to 6 months, we've seen a great demand for units again. People are starting to come back into the city, come back to those condos. So it's a great way to get your feet wet and get into the market. The other thing is multi-unit residential, that being buying more than one unit, which will incur owning a small building. It could be a duplex, or it could be a triplex, or it can be a 6-unit building. Note that anything over 6 units, it's different guidelines, and the lending guidelines definitely change. You now start going into more of a commercial end of things. So I'm going to focus more on 2 to 6 units when I say a multi-unit residential. It's a lower cost of entry per door. So when I say use this term, what I mean is that, let's say you were to purchase a condo for $500,000, a 2-unit building, i.e. such as a duplex, for example, where you have 2 separate units, may cost you maybe about $800,000 to get in. So therefore, if you look at it from a per door basis, you're now spending roughly $400,000 per door. Right? The more doors you have also, it reduces your vacancy rate. The one risk you face by owning a single condo unit is if it's empty, you have no money coming in. Let's say you own a 4-plex, for example, and 3 units are occupied and 1 happens to be empty. Guess what? You're still getting 75% of your income, of your income. So you're not losing everything at that point in time. The other thing, which is quite popular with a lot of people, is using a portion of that multi-unit building for personal use, therefore having it being used as owner occupied. And in a lot of cases, someone may own a triplex, for example, and they would rent 2 units out and live in 1. The great thing about that is, one, you're able to subsidize your lifestyle. So someone is actually helping to pay for where you're living. The second thing is some of your overall maintenance costs for the building itself will be tax deductible because you have rental units. So it's a great way to keep your lifestyle costs down, and also at the same time from a tax perspective. Next slide, please. So what to consider when looking for an investment property? Well, I can tell you this, there are many things to consider, but I'm going to touch on the main points. Income or capital gains. So are you willing to give up income in hope of a greater one in the future? So what I'm saying is this: are you willing to give up income now by possibly purchasing a property that may or may not be cash positive for you, where you may put in a couple $100s a month, while let's say 3-4 years down the line, you would see an increase in your overall price of the property, and now have the ability to take that equity out of it and to use that equity to maybe purchase another property to increase your income streams, or maybe put it into another investment, i.e. maybe buy some stocks, maybe buy cryptocurrency, etc. So are you willing to give up some for now for a better future? Next slide, please. Location. I think this is one of the greatest things to consider when looking at investing in real estate. So is there an existing market? If there's an existing market, guess what? Entry may be a bit expensive and upside may be a bit limited. So a great example is, of course, downtown Toronto. There is definitely an existing market, and the entry to get in can be considered somewhat expensive. And your upside may be limited depending on what real estate prices will do in the future and what rents will do in the future. And that's something I'm definitely going to touch on at the end of the presentation when I speak about the real estate market 2022 and beyond. Is there potential for growth? If the market's at its peak, how much more do you think the market can grow from here? Low cost of entry. If it's a location, let's say outside of Toronto, if you're willing to go an hour and a half outside of Toronto, it may be a lower cost of entry for you. So it allows you to get into that property that you may or may not be able to get into in Toronto or the GTA, which would also possibly give you a huge upside, greater reward. So you may find that rents may start moving up a lot quickly as you've now gone into an area that was previously untapped. And of course, with a greater reward comes greater risk. So are you willing to take that risk of not staying in Toronto, but maybe going somewhere else that has not been charted before to purchase a property and to be a landlord? I will say this, one thing to keep in mind, when investing in real estate, and especially when it comes to location, if you're looking further out into the city, are you willing to deal with that property if something happens? Do you have the capacity to do that? So as I always ask people, and I always say this, the funny thing with real estate, and especially being a landlord, is this: the furnace never breaks during the summer, and the AC doesn't break during the winter. So you may find yourself in a position where the furnace goes in December and it's -25, and you have to find yourself out in, let's say, an hour or hour and a half from where you currently reside to take care of an issue like that. So a great thing I always encourage people to do is think of a property manager. Remember this, a property manager is tax deductible. You are now running a business once you become a landlord. So a lot of things that you may not consider with your personal residence, you will definitely need to consider when you own an investment property. Next slide, please. The other thing to consider, and definitely varies, is target markets. So what is your target market? And this is something you need to determine pretty early. So are you considering students? If you're trying to get into the student world of renting to students, which has proven to be quite lucrative for a lot of people, well, therefore, you need to look at areas where there's a huge student population. So maybe you're going to start looking at properties close to universities, etc., close to colleges. All right. Are you looking at young professionals? If you're looking at young professionals, where most young professionals tend to live, they tend to live in the city along Young Street, Young and Eglinton, Young and Lawrence, King West, King East, etc. If those are the types of clients you're looking for, you need to look in those areas for your properties. If you're looking to cater to more families, people with kids, well, guess what? You may want to look at houses, not think of condos, but maybe look at detached houses or smaller semi-detached homes, and outside of the city, if you have the budget, in order to help target that market itself. Each market comes with different needs. I always say to people, never think of yourself when looking at a property. In terms of investments, I've always had clients say, well, you know what, I could never live there. It's too small. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have that. And my response to them is always, are you going to be living there? And the answer is no, it doesn't matter then. Next slide, please. So the last thing I want to touch on is the elephant in the room, and that is real estate investing in 2022 and beyond. And I think this goes for the overall real estate market in general. Next slide. So what we've seen in the real estate market has been a lack of listings. I know there's been a lot of reports in the media that it's interest rates, and yes, interest rates are encouraging a lot of people to come out there to buy and have been driving prices definitely up. But if you take a look at this chart, and this is as of December 2021, and I know a lot of people think, well, December's not a busy month for purchase or sales when it comes to real estate. You will see that if you compare it to December 2027, which was the last time we really had when we had a blip in the real estate market, we had 12,926 transactions in December of 2017. Compared to December of 2021, we only had 3,232 transactions. So this goes to show to you that there's not much, not transactions, active listings, sorry about that. This goes to show to you that there are not many listings out there at all. So therefore, basic economics, supply and demand, lack of supply has only increased demand, which in turn has increased price in real estate. And this is definitely something I think we're going to continue to see for quite some time in Toronto and the GTA overall. The most recent numbers came out for January. I did not have time to add them. They just came out on last Friday. But for January, it was a record low in the last 20 years, I believe, in terms of listings. So there's definitely a lack of listings out there, which is definitely pushing real estate prices even more. And the next slide I'm going to take a look at is going to show to you why I think it's going to keep happening a bit more. The Canada's population, when we adjust it to a housing stock, meaning how many homes are out there, is the lowest in all G7 countries. All right. And the outcomes are different based on province to province, but it's been noted that Alberta, Manitoba, and Ontario have the lowest number of homes per capita relative to other provinces. Right. However, please don't feel any despair whatsoever, because we've seen a sharp increase in housing starts, and housing starts are new construction homes or condominiums happening in 2021. So we've seen a rise in a lot of new houses being built for people in Ontario. I will like to add that even though we're seeing more properties being built, the next slide is going to be of somewhat interest to you, that we're seeing more people coming to the province also. So next slide. So Canada will be seeking to add for 2022 411,000 new immigrants and 421,000 new immigrants in 2023. And if I'm not mistaken, in 2021, even during COVID, we added roughly about 400,000 or 410,000 new immigrants to Canada. And studies have shown that out of that, almost 50% of new immigrants will end up in Ontario for various reasons, maybe family, communities, religious reasons, and of course, last but not least, when it comes to job opportunities. So I fully expect with the new immigrants coming into Canada, coupled with a lack of housing supply, we are still going to see somewhat pressure on real estate prices increasing for 2022 and beyond. Next slide, please. So overall, I would say if you're thinking of getting into the real estate market from an investment perspective and even from a ownership perspective for yourself, it's not too late. Yes, it may seem a bit expensive right now, but there's still opportunity out there. Interest rates are still at an all-time low. Yes, there has been a lot of talk of rates going up. However, when we compare rates to where they are now to over the past even the past 5 years, we're still at an all-time low. So it is still somewhat affordable, not for everyone. And I know it's quite difficult out there to come up with a down payment and also take on that type of mortgage. But I think as time goes by, unfortunately, we may actually find it a bit more unaffordable over the next 2 to 3 years in terms of real estate prices. Anyway, if you have any questions, once again, please feel free to contact me via my website, brandtmorris.com. If you'd like to receive any customized monthly real estate updates, or you'd like to have more information on the Toronto or GTA real estate market, please feel free to give me an email at brandtmorris@bosleyrealestate.com. And of course, you can reach out to me on any of my social media handles, all at brandtmorris.com. Thank you very much, and look forward to hearing your questions. So I hope you all enjoyed the presentations, and I look forward to questions that you may have. Anyone has questions? When is the best time to get into the market? I would say right now. Some people say, well, I'm going to wait until 6 months down the line. I'm going to wait till next year. The problem is that the longer you've waited, as we've seen over the past few years, the prices have continued to increase. If we've seen, for example, a 20% increase in house prices year over year throughout the GTA region, that property that you were paying, let's say, $1 million, to use a round number, at a 20% increase it will now cost you $1.2 million. So it'll cost you $200,000 more to actually get into the market. So if you're definitely in the position to get in, I would say strike while it's hot. Also, interest rates are still extremely low, and we haven't seen any interest rates still low. We haven't seen any increases as of yet in terms of rates. So now may be a good time to go out, get yourself pre-approved, and lock in that interest rate. Any other questions? Where you recommend investing in GTA? I would say all over. Ironically, yesterday I was up in a place called Tiny, Ontario, which is a bit north of Barrie, looking at a property. And even there, the properties I was shocked at the price of properties. It just depends on how much you can afford and what type of mortgage do you feel comfortable with. When it comes to investing, as I said, you determine, are you in it for capital gains, or are you looking to rent the property, etc. Or is it for personal use? All have a different viewpoint or strategy. But I would say in general, there's no bad spot in Ontario or the GTA, more specifically, I would say right now. Believe it or not, I'm shocked every time when I think back 15 years ago, people were hesitant to move out to the 905 area. Now the 905 is the hottest market in the GTA overall, surpassing Toronto in terms of year-over-year growth and appreciation. Okay, I have a question here at the side. How can one get into the market? Are there any tips? Okay, thank you very much. That's a good question, really good question. Well, first of all, I would say you need to get together, again, get pre-approved. That's the number one thing. It gives you a fantastic baseline to know where you need to start from. The pre-approval, a few things are going to happen under pre-approval. I didn't get into it too much at the beginning because it's more mortgage-based, but I do have an understanding of how it works. So I'll speak to you a bit more about it. In terms of getting yourselves pre-approved, the pre-approval allows, it's based on your income, less any outstanding monthly debts. So if you have credit card, car payments, etc., that monthly amount will affect how much you can afford how much you can afford in terms of a mortgage. So knowing how much you can afford, first of all, will tell you where you can move when it comes to getting to the market. The other thing, of course, is getting together your down payment. You have a couple of options. The main option, which a lot of people have been doing, is to tapping into your RRSPs. The guidelines have changed as time has gone by, and it would be best to speak to a mortgage specialist or mortgage broker on this. But I believe you're allowed up to $30,000 out of your RSP tax-free if you're a first-time home buyer to take out of that to put towards your down payment or closing costs when it comes to purchasing a home. The other thing is if you've been fortunate enough to invest in a TFSA, for example, you also do have some tax-free money here that you're allowed to use in order to put towards your down payment. Next question. People mention it's better to invest in pre-construction condos. Is that true? Good question. How do I answer this? At one point in time, I would say, yes, I've actually purchased pre-construction condos myself in the past. However, what we're finding now is developers are basically charging future value for a lot of these pre-construction condos. Meaning in the past, let's say you paid $200,000 for a condo. There was hope by the time it closed in 3 years' time, a condo may be worth $325,000 or $400,000. So you've made some money on it. What we're seeing now is developers are charging not today's market rates, but market rates for the future. And the reason being is the costs have gone up substantially when it has come to condo developments. The other thing with pre-construction condos or pre-construction in general, you have to be wary of is a few things. One, when purchasing a pre-construction, the builder has the right to change the design if necessary. So there have been many times where someone has bought a condo, for example, and there was no pillar in the middle of the living room on the plans, but when it came to take possession of the condo, there was a pillar. And what happened? It was needed for architectural reasons / also engineering reasons. So you're now stuck with that. So your design may change slightly at times. The other thing is the builder has the right to cancel the project at any time and refund you your money. We've seen a few projects being canceled here in the city of Toronto, and they've been more. It has been more to do with, again, cost. Some builders may have charged a certain rate. Let's say they charge $400 a square foot to build a condo, and as time has gone by, they've realized, hey, I can get $600 a square foot for this same project. I'm going to cancel it. I know it's not fair, but it does happen. I'm not saying every builder does this. I would say definitely check into the builder's track record. And also the builder may run out of money where you're in a position now where you're just getting back your deposit. The issue with this is if you gave a deposit for pre-construction in 2018 and we're in 2022 and you now discovered that this project may not go ahead anymore, you're out 4 years of potential growth when it has come to real estate prices. So you may be out a couple $100,000 in terms of overall growth. So that's another thing to definitely consider. I'm not saying it's not the way to go, but I would put some caution when it comes to getting into pre-construction real estate. If you had $1 million cash to buy a house, would it be best to buy the house straight or no, if that makes sense? Okay, yeah, I know what you mean by that. No, I would never, ever, again, this is personal. I would never take that full $1 million and put it into the house. I think you will put enough into the house where you can afford in terms of make mortgage payments on it. I think I mentioned before, we're at an all-time we're at an all-time low right now when it comes to interest rates. So on a variable rate mortgage right now, you should be able to get prime minus 0.85%. I believe prime, the bank's prime is about 2.45% if when last I checked. So you should be paying under 2%. I'm pretty sure you can get a better return with the remainder of your money if you invested it into something else. Instead of sinking it all into the house. This goes back to the whole thing where I say leveraging the money from your property to get into another property or investments. It's the same thing with it. So if I had $1 million, if I had to put the 20% down, I'll take $1 million and the property was $1 million. I would put 200,000 in as a down payment, and the other 800,000 maybe look at another property or another type of investment to put the rest of the money in, where I may be able to get a better return on it overall. Where's the best place to start with this adventure? Is there demand in specific areas? So when you say demand, is it in terms of real estate investing itself? Because as I mentioned, investing versus personal use, you have to look at it with a different set of glasses. In terms of investing, I would say right now, everywhere seems to be pretty hot overall. I know people that have bought properties a couple of years ago in Collingwood, for example, and they've used them for Airbnb purposes. Remember, the city of Toronto has pretty much banned Airbnb. You have to have a license, and of course, a lot of condo buildings don't like you to have don't allow Airbnb in the city itself. So it makes it a bit tougher from that standpoint. In terms of rentals, the rental market has become is strong again. We definitely saw a lull in prices right after COVID. I would say from around March, April 2020 to about March 2021, almost a full year where we saw a lot of prices. But I can say this: prices have rebounded greatly since then. I would say we are maybe about 2 or 3% off the peak prices we were seeing prior to COVID when it comes to rental properties, rental prices. When it comes to buying a condo for the first time, what's a good area to be in? If it's for yourself, take into consideration your lifestyle choice, as I always say. Is it close to work? One of the great things about a condo is that it typically can provide you a location that makes it easy for you to get to work. I know we are saying we're in a world right now where everything is going to be quote unquote work from home. Interestingly enough, I'm seeing a lot of people being called back to work. Especially in the financial and insurance field. Remember this, a lot of these companies that have offices downtown, when they signed these leases, it's not like a residential lease where it's for 1 year. These leases are for 10, 15, 20 years, which they're committed to the building owners for. And also when you're doing these commercial leases, a lot of these companies, they pay for everything. So when I say pay for them, they pay for basically the construction of the office space. So if you go into any of these towers downtown or office buildings, from the washroom to the lighting to the carpeting on the floors to all the cubicles, the desk, everything, they paid for that out of pocket themselves. It wasn't done by the owner of the building. So you have to ask yourself the question: as a business, am I going to keep all this closed, knowing that I've sunk this much money into it, in order to have people work from home or make them come back to work and use the facilities that I've paid for and I'm on a lease for? As I said, a lot of these office leases are for up to 20 years they're locked in for. So I would definitely say consider, if you're getting a condo, is it close to your office? Is it close to family, friends? What's important to you if you're going to be living there specifically? Going back to if it's as an investment, as I said before, figure out what is your target market. If it's young professionals, students, if it's students, maybe closer to the schools. If it's college kids, let's say in Scarborough, maybe near Scarborough Town Center, where you have easy access to the LRT, their buses, etc. So it's easy to commute to, let's say, the campuses I believe there's a UFT campus over, or Humber campus over on Morningside, and also the UFT Scarborough campus may be attractive to students that are looking to rent. Even professionals, a lot of professionals rent out of there. You have a lot of businesses within the area, but also it's a major hub from, let's say, the Scarborough Town Center to get into the downtown core, get to the subway, etc. So these are things you have to consider if you're looking for a condo from an investment standpoint, I would say also. Is cottage country the way to go? I hear you can rent for over 10K per month in the high seasons. Yes, you can definitely rent for over 10,000 and even more in the high seasons. The challenge with cottages is this: they're expensive. Everyone has the same, unfortunately, everyone has the same idea. I'm kicking myself because I believe 4 years ago, I was speaking with a friend of mine who's a lawyer, and we were discussing about buying a condo, and we were, a cottage up in Muskoka actually, and we just found it too expensive. It's like I'm not gonna pay. I think they wanted $750,000, and we're like, I'm not gonna pay this for it, etc. Lo and behold, right now that same cottage, I saw it come back up. It's been a bit of work has been put into it. It sold for 1.25 million. So I slap myself silly for that at times and shake my head, but I felt I wasn't willing to do that. Now, if you're paying 1.2 million for a cottage and you're making 10,000 a month, you got to figure out, okay, how much of a high season you have. You have maybe 3, maybe 4 months out of that in terms of rentals, but it is possible. But you have to ask yourself, can you also afford to carry it? Let's say it goes empty. Also with a cottage, there are other factors to take into consideration, such as repairs. Repairs tend to be a bit on the high side when it comes to cottages, especially if you are near the water, for example. Do you have a dock? If you have a dock, you need to bring the dock in every winter. Do you have things for people to use, such as boats, all that stuff? All that stuff has to be packed away every season, at times also stored. Are you going to make it a 4-season cottage? Depending on where the cottage is, it may be best to look at a 4-season. So you have areas such as Collingwood. Collingwood is popular as a 4-season resort because you have during the summer, it's great for cycling, it's great for running, there are great boating activities, and then come wintertime, it's great for skiing. As opposed to, let's say, you go further north into true cottage country near Lake Russo, any of those major lakes, you find that during the winter there's not much to do, so you don't get a lot of traffic at that point in time in terms of people looking to go up there during winter. But I would say even in Collingwood, you do have a lull. So there are periods that I would say from maybe September to Thanksgiving, late early October, early November, it can be a bit slow. Your high periods are definitely going to be from ski season in December to about around March, depending on how much snow we have. It'll be a little bit of a lull, and then it'll pick back up, I would say, again, come May to Labor Day weekend. It should be pretty busy again there. Any other questions? I was told I can't purchase a home as a single income person. Is that true? That is definitely 100% false. Many people purchase homes as a single person. The one thing is they're going to take a look at your income. So I think if it's 2 people on the application, you have double the income in terms of affordability to put in order to purchase a home. So depending on how much you make. There is a formula. I believe it's 5.6 times your income. Will figure out it will allow you. That will determine how much of a mortgage you can afford. Keep in mind, if you have a lot of debt outstanding, that will impact how much of a mortgage you will be able to afford. So I would say, as a good rule of thumb, use 5.6% of your income to determine what type of mortgage. But again, go out, sit down, speak to a mortgage broker. If you don't know a mortgage broker, please feel free to reach out to me. I can always put you through to a number of them that I've used personally and professionally for clients over the years, and they'll be definitely able to assist you. But don't listen to the rumors. Don't listen to what people say to you. Always get professional advice and help. Any other questions? How do you feel about buying in groups or together with two families? Whew, okay. It's good as long as everyone's on the same page. Everyone has the same options and goals. It's the same thing where if you were to purchase a home with a group of friends, for example, is everyone on the same page when it comes to it? Remember, with a home, you can't sell a portion of it. So I've seen scenarios where it's been extremely, extremely successful, especially if you're looking at larger properties. So let's say you're looking to buy a fourplex, for example, i.e. 4 units or even 6 units. It is pretty tough for one person to buy it. But if you have 2-3 people going in together in a joint ownership, it would make it a lot easier. In that case, I would definitely recommend you will have to structure it a bit differently, just because of things. If someone were to die, who has the rights of it, etc. How you structure it is escaping me right now, unfortunately. And it's not a limited partnership. It's a partnership. It's a special type of partnership that you have. Contact me and I can tell you more about it. But you set it up as a partnership. Now with family, we've all done business with family. What I have, and some have been good, some have been bad. But again, is everyone on the same page? So if you're looking from an investment standpoint, are they committed to the long term are they in it for the long term? Life happens, and it's difficult for someone to say, hey, I need the money from this investment now, let's sell it. And you may be, well, I'm not ready to sell it. I don't need the money. We're making great income from it. Prices have gone up and we'd be crazy to sell it, right? So it's somewhat tricky when it comes to that, but you definitely have to go in with someone that you're comfortable with, and that you've sat down and you've mapped out what is your long-term plan for it. Real estate is a long-term business. It's not short-term. It's not as sexy as stocks or cryptocurrency or anything like that whatsoever. But as I said in the presentation, it definitely pays off in the long run. And I will say I have an investment background. As I said, I worked in wealth management for many years, got into real estate for many years. And I would say my most successful investment has been in real estate so far, just because you can't sell it. It's there. You have the money, you almost forget about it, but it gives you a great ability 5-10 years down the line to leverage off of it to go into other properties or other investments out there. Any other questions? How do you feel about renting to own for condos? I think are you speaking about the rent to own, where you pay a portion in terms of rent and they give you a portion of ownership later down the line? If that's what you're talking about, you end up paying more in the long run on the rent to own. They of course there's a built-in interest rate inside of there, which is typically tends to be higher than the current mortgage rate. So in long term, you will end up paying more for that property, but it also allows you to get into the property. I've never personally done it, and I don't know many people that have that. I've maybe met 1 or 2 people that have done it. It's not extremely popular, I would say, but it is an option. Any other questions? Can more than one person be entitled for a property? What would be the max? Most definitely more than one person could be entitled. I would not say there's a maximum number of people that can be entitled. If you're getting into, let's say, 5, 6, 7 people, I would say, depending on, I would say in that case, it may be best to form a partnership and do it under a business or even incorporate. Going that route, but you can definitely have more than one person on title. For example, if you were to buy a house as a couple, husband and wife, or same sex or whatever, both names will be legally untitled. If you were a couple and you had someone co-signing for you because your credit may not be strong enough, or you may not have enough income to cover the mortgage based on the bank's guidelines, that person will also be entitled on the mortgage. So I've seen those cases very common, where I've seen 3 or even sometimes 4 people on title, where a family member or friend may try to help out someone in order to purchase the property. But I would also say have an agreement drawn up by a lawyer stating that when it comes to sell, how the proceeds of that property will be distributed at the end of the day. Any other questions? Okay, so it's time for a giveaway. I don't know if we're going to put the question up, but what I was asking was, what are 2 things to consider when looking at an investment property? I spoke about it during the investment segment of the workshop. So what are 2 things to consider when it came up? What are 2 things to consider when looking for an investment property? And today's prize pack is the compliments of Puma. Close, not quite. You have 1 of the 2. You have 1. Actually, yeah, that's correct. Who's the last one there? Yeah, location and lifestyle. Perfect. No, that's not for investment. Sorry. That is correct, MJ. Location and target market. So location and target market is 2 of the 3. The other one was determining if you were for greater income potential. So congratulations to MJ. So any questions? Well, I will say thank you very much for joining me this evening. Greatly appreciated your time. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact me at via email at bmorris, MORRIS, at bosleyrealestate.com, or you can contact me directly at my office, 416-322-8000. Or visit my website and you'll see a little chat box will pop up where you can ask me any questions and contact me at brandtjmorris.com. And of course, I'm on all social media sites under at Brandt J. Morris. Thank you very much and have a great evening.